Hello and welcome to CXPRESSO Caffeine Overload, episode 4. I am your espresso drinking host, Dave Seaton, with Seaton CX, where we create compelling customer journey maps that helps companies make better business decisions. Today, we have a very special episode because we have a guest, our first guest, Sean Albertson, who is going to help us understand what to do after we've created a customer journey map. So on the last show, we talked about the leaky bucket. The bucket represents your company and the water is your customers. And sales and marketing are pouring in customers as fast as they can, but you're losing customers because the bucket has holes in it. And depending on which industry you're in and which study you believe, it's anywhere between 5 and 25 times more expensive to acquire a new customer than to retain an existing customer. So we want to understand where those holes are in our leaky bucket so that we can make changes and retain more customers. And customer journey mapping shows us where the holes are. Through the customer journey mapping process, we identify the leaks in the bucket. Give you a few examples. One company that I worked with, B2B company, was leaking from the service and support organization. Customers were so frustrated with service and support that they decided to switch and try a different vendor. Another B2B company I worked with was leaking from the customer onboarding process. They didn't really have a churn problem because once customers got up on the product and the service, they were generally happy with it. But that onboarding process was so painful that customers weren't buying additional modules. So they had an upsell, cross-sell problem because of the customer onboarding process. So they were leaking additional revenue from that part of the journey. A third company, B2C company, was leaking from the product itself. Before we did the journey map, they didn't know why customers were churning. They had a bunch of ideas, maybe the competitor had a better offer or a lower price, but they didn't realize that it was the product itself that was causing customers to churn. So customer journey mapping shows us where the biggest leaks are. And after we do that, companies spring into action. They want to plug the leaks. But what comes next? One of the biggest questions that I get, most frequent questions about customer journey mapping is, okay, you make a map and then what? How do you keep it updated? How do you know if your improvements are working? And here is where we get into customer journey management and journey analytics. So to answer this question, I want to welcome a very special guest, Sean Albertson. Let's bring him on stage here because there is nothing more awkward than hanging out on video while someone reads your bio. So let's do that to Sean now. I'm going to read his bio. Sean has been a CX leader for over 20 years across companies from startups to Fortune 200. He's been at the forefront of transforming the customer journey to reduce effort and drive loyalty. He's created advanced CX programs leveraging text analytics, operational metrics, journey analytics, and survey programs using artificial intelligence to drive real results. Sean shares his experience from the stage as an international speaker and workshop facilitator, as well as an advisor to CX leading companies. Sean's the author of an award-winning book, 4 Rocks: Reduce Effort, Drive Loyalty, Transform the Customer Journey, which you can check out on his website, cxforrocks.com. Sean, welcome to CXPRESSO Caffeine Overload. What kind of coffee are you drinking today?
Well, Dave, first off, thank you. I thought about just kind of mocking and making, face noises while you were introducing me. But no, today is just some drip. I've got some Dunkin' drip, because unfortunately I'm out of what I really like. So if anybody's had Cooper's bourbon coffee, is good stuff. Love that. I'm also a big, obviously, bourbon drinker. So, but anyway, thanks for having me.
Yeah, great that you're here. You're up in Castle Rock, Colorado. I'm a little south in Colorado Springs. Would love to hear from our guests. Where are you joining from? I forgot to ask that earlier, but I always love seeing where everybody is joining us from. So Sean and I are both in Colorado on the Front Range of the Rocky Mountains. And Sean, the Rocky Mountains, and specifically Rocky Mountain National Park, shaped your CX strategy. What's that story?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Corpus Christi, Texas, where everything is flat. I mean, the sand dunes are the biggest things they've got, right? I moved to Colorado after I graduated college and met my wife and have been there ever since. I love the mountains. And so my wife's a native. And so we would always go up to Rocky Mountain National Park. And I have 3 boys. And back in 2008, when they were all really little, we're at the park. There's this place called Moraine Park, and it's got this river, the Big Thompson River, that just winds back and forth through it. And the boys are there. We're having fun. The boys are being nuts. They're splashing in the water. They're trying to skip rocks, but really they're just throwing rocks. And in the middle of that chaos, my youngest son looks at me and says, "Dad, why does this river not flow straight?" Now, I did the normal dad thing. I made something up on the spot. And, I sounded very confident, and he didn't have a smartphone. So I figured, all right, I was going to get away with it. My oldest son, he pipes up from over by the river. He says, "Well, no, I learned about that in school. It's the rocks. The rocks get in the way. So the river has to turn, and then there's erosion. So it picks up rocks and deposits them." And he did all this explanation of stuff that he had learned. What hit me, I'd been doing CX for years at that point, and it hit me to say, man, the customer journey is a lot like these rivers, especially in the Rocky Mountains. And we like to think in business, we're designing nice, straight, smooth, easy flows of these rivers. But no, the customers are bouncing off of our rocks. They're winding around. They're hitting rapids. Great in Colorado to pay to go down Class 5 rapids. But as a customer, no, I don't want to go down a Class 5 rapid with a company. And so it really started me thinking, because again, when I think about the leaky bucket, to me, it's the rocks in the journey, the rocks in the river that cause those holes where you're losing the customers out the back end. So love the analogies, and they kind of work a little bit together. Let's just say you throw rocks at the bucket, it creates holes. Let's talk about it that way. So.
That works. Why do you think it's so hard for companies to create that straight river experience?
Well, it's getting too complex. I mean, if you had one channel that you could, manage, it would be easy. But now you're talking about dozens of different channels. In fact, I think Marketing Week says that on average, customers use six different touch points with the same company regularly. So that complexity has caused a lot of challenges to orchestrate it. Plus, you not only have complexities between the technology, you've got business silos. Call center and contact center folks don't always talk to the web developers or the app developers or the marketing team. You've got these business silos that are getting in the way, and it's not anybody's fault. Nobody's really trying to do that. It's just the natural tendency of a complex business environment, the need to have specialized services, which by default means you don't always have a joint shared operation. And so the journeys they follow suit. They get more complex, they get more segmented. And daily now with new tech, chat bots and everything else, it's getting even more complicated to create that seamless connection, which is really ultimately what the customer requires.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see that in journey mapping, from this touch point to that touch point, they're bouncing around in that Class 5 rapids. And we get a lot of great, opportunities. Some of these we call them just do it's or JDI. It's like, makes a ton of sense to just go and fix that problem. But then what happens next? That's really the question of the day. We create a journey map, we understand the customer experience. Then what do we do?
Yeah, and that's where this is such an exciting space, because I mean, if you think about it too, rivers are constantly changing in the mountains. Because I know, in fact, that Big Thompson River, due to flooding or other things, has changed all the time, and every year it may look a little different. Well, that's what happens to the customer journey. you always have new things happening, because the second you do anything different, it can create a rock. It can create a challenge. So journey mapping sets the table. It lets you understand the journey at an aggregate level. It lets you really see where those opportunities are. It gives you your marching orders for your first set of activities. But because things are changing constantly, this is where more journey orchestration, journey analytics, journey management come into play. And that's really where I specialize in, is to work to do that. Because what you end up needing to do is you need to then at scale get out of the data what you got from your journey mapping exercise. But you got to do it at scale, because again, you've got to see it in almost near real time, how things are changing. When do new things pop up? When are they resolved and moving on to those next issues? And that's really where journey analytics comes into scale. And things like using surveys to understand it, using operational metrics to understand, when are rocks coming up, time on page for the web team, or channel or digital containment. That can be kind of telling where there are rocks in certain processes. Call center, handle time, hold time. I mean, there's all sorts of other metrics that go with the surveys that you're doing. But then it's about text analytics, looking at all of the calls that are coming in, looking at their transcripts or the chat transcripts, and understanding the events, and using that kind of analytics to identify where those biggest challenges are that are, in essence, brand new, that weren't there maybe when you mapped a little while back. And then you're ultimately, the power today is coming from AI, connecting the data and then going through all of that mass amount of data using AI, which is stitching together and strengthening your view of the overall journey and highlighting where those biggest opportunities lie.
So thinking about, all this data, because companies are swimming in it, right? What makes it journey analytics and not just analytics? Or in other words, why is that understanding of the journey important?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first off, as you said in the journey mapping exercise, you have to understand the journey. And the reality is, I'll just use an example. I posted about this a little while back. I was coming back from a trip, and it was like, it was comical how many problems were happening with the flights, and then flight changes, and then delays. And then, I mean, literally, I went through, there was about a million, not a million, but there were at least a dozen different problems. It was kind of like that, just landslide of rocks, if you will. It was horrible. And here's the reality. That was my journey experience. It doesn't matter if I had a barista during the middle of that was so nice to me and incredible and gave me something good. That one event, that one task had little to do with my overall opinion of the journey. Well, that's kind of like businesses thinking, oh, if I survey after a call and that agent was really nice, it's going to solve everything. No, that's not the experience. That's a task. And so it goes back to understanding the journey is a must in today's world. We have to, because going back to it, effort, the higher the effort, the more likely I am to be disloyal. So I fall in that camp of customer effort score. Many of the listeners may know about that. Love to hear from you, some comments online if you're a follower. But what they found, this was back in 2013, the book, The Effortless Experience. And I built a lot of my book around that as kind of a follow-on of how to actually use it in real life. But the effort score identified that back then, if someone said their issue was hard to resolve, their journey was hard, they were 4 times more likely to be disloyal. In my research today, they're 5 times more likely to be disloyal. Wow. So it's growing. So the reality is, if you want to plug the leaky bucket, you got to find the things that the customers say are high effort or hard to do, because that's what's spinning them off to the competition. Think of it. If you're going down a really awful river that you didn't expect, class 5 rapids, but you look over and that river looks really smooth over there. I'm going to go over there. That's what the customers are doing. They're saying they're following the easier journeys with companies, and you'll lose the customers because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly what I saw with that B2B company that had the really hard onboarding experience. The customers described being exhausted at the end of that, and they didn't want to buy additional modules and go through that again. Right.
Absolutely.
So then we kind of defined journey analytics. What's journey management?
So journey management, then journey analytics gives you the view in real time. So things will pop up in that using the analytics. Journey management now, or others have called it journey orchestration, is changing as you're seeing those things occur. So they're two sides of the same coin. Like if you only do journey analytics, yeah, you're figuring out what's wrong, but you're not doing anything with it. So you've got to have the flip side. So you've got to be analyzing and understanding and prioritizing and then executing. So the journey management now is the execution of that. And that is oftentimes more of a technology play, but don't get me wrong, your people have to be ready first. You processes have to then be ready as well. And then your platforms or your technology can take over. But you got to make sure that you're ready to act. And so that's where journey management comes in. And, the more you know about the experiences, especially those that are sending customers away to your competition, now the more you're looking to do that. And the key with all of this, and it even goes back to the part of the previous question I didn't answer, which was looking at that journey throughout that process, you've got to be able to make the changes wherever they are occurring, whether it be the web or the mobile app or the phone or the chat team, et cetera. But more often than not, the problem is on the in between. The problem is when I have to switch. And we actually, I work with another company. We just finished some massive research we did across North America around the customer experience, the customer journey. And what we're seeing is, extreme. The second biggest driver for overall professional and effort and easy was it easy for me to go to self-service to the contact center? And followed by, did I have to repeat myself? So this is where you've got to tap in across those journeys, because it's not just about the website being as good as it can be and the contact center being as good as it can be. They have to be good together. And that's where you have to create that orchestration to make sure when Murphy comes in and anything that can happen does, you got to almost be prepared to that and understand, all right, well, what's the handoff going to be when the web or the app fails and I have to go to a human? And too often the teams are not concentrated that way. They're trying to focus in channel completely, but you've got to be orchestrating it across the channels, across the journey, and over time. Because again, some of the most frustrating issues are the ones that take days, weeks, months to get resolved.
Yeah. Back to that effortless experience and that idea of channel switching. I tried on the website, I failed. So then I reached out to the contact center, and to the contact center, that's the first interaction, right? But to the customer, they've already tried something and failed. And so now they're into another interaction.
Yeah. In this digital first world,
Yeah.
contact centers are almost never first.
Yeah.
And the reality is that employee who's answering, and this is where I do a lot of my advising, whether it be around tech or process or whatever, is to say, that agent who is will be talking to the customer. You need to be bringing that data to them like that, so that they can say, I see, to a certain extent, I can see you were online and trying to do this. How can I help you finish this process? Yeah. That's what the customers are expecting, instead of, hi, I'm so-and-so. How can I help you today?
Right.
Okay. Can you verify your phone number? Can you verify your mother's maiden name or everything else? It's no seamless integration.
So we're coming up on the Q&A section. I've got one more question for Sean, but because of this 10-second delay between what we say and what the audience hears, go ahead and be prepping your questions in Q&A. We'll do as much as we can in the next 10 minutes. So Sean, last question. AI is the thing that everybody's talking about since ChatGPT blew up in November 2022. We've now had almost 2 years of seeing AI and all of its hallucinations and applications, and there's a lot of hype and there's a little bit of good stuff. How can these emerging technologies like AI and automation be used to improve both the customer experience and the business outcomes for the company?
Yeah. Well, here's the good news. That kind of AI, that newer generative AI, we've been using AI in journey analytics for years and years and years. Being able to use AI to do machine learning and predictive analytics. Because if you think about the journey, if I can look at all the data and make sense of it, I can actually see, all right, well, this is the likely not happy path. This is the likely happy path. Let me get involved in that the unhappy path and fix it. Like things that are going to go high effort or hard effort. What's now changing though is the ability to leverage generative AI to summarize that content, to be able to pull out the most important things. So you talked about earlier, we're drowning in data. And if it was just about having data, we'd all be great. The reality is it's about using that data. I mean, if you've ever looked at Adobe weblogs across one experience, I mean, it's like pages and pages. Every little thing has a link to it. You can't make sense of that without some sort of generative AI to summarize it that it's taught on. I recommend generative AI from a chatbot perspective is the worst it's ever going to be. It will only get better every day. The reality is your own data has to be good that you're training it on. That's the key. And most companies can't say that. So really, when we think about it, I am more a proponent today of use generative AI to assist your employees in the human channel almost than provide self-service. Now, I think you can do very specific targeted self-service activities using generative AI and chatbots.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think there's, at least today, putting limits on what you try to do there and try to get them to the agent faster. I think the reality is, again, if I have to switch channels, if I wanted something, great, but don't send me down a rabbit hole and then tell me to switch. I'd rather you say, if you pretty much know something I asked the chatbot to do will never work out, tell me immediately, yeah, we're not gonna be able to do that. Why don't you call? But by the way, your information that you're asking about is going to be ready for that agent. So this is where the generative AI can come in. If I receive a call, you can use generative AI and agent assist to basically look at the CRM for the most recent activities, look at recent transactions, look at any surveys, look at the weblogs for what they were doing, and summarize to the agent in a very pithy way the bullets of, you need to know these 3 things. This is what they were trying to do. This is roughly where their sentiment is. This is how active they are in contacting us. And the agent now is ready. Not only that, but using the same generative AI, the knowledge articles are popping up to the employee already because they know what the customer was trying to do. As the dialogue is occurring, as they're taking notes, again, the tools are now there to assist. And this is really where the exciting opportunity is to capitalize on the human channel. Too many companies are going after the technology, the chatbots, to get rid of the contact center or the people. I think the more we shove technology at the consumer, the more they're going to want humans, especially in the journeys, not the tasks. And so this is where you really got to make sure and use those tools to make the employees better. And by the way, then they'll help you train where's your information not right for when you do want to put it customer facing. They'll help you with that information as well.
Awesome. If we've got any questions, I am not sure. I had a hard time starting the live stream, so I'm not sure if my app is working. Sean, do you see any comments? I don't see any comments.
I don't either. So I don't either. But yeah, please enter some comments, enter some notes. But we can keep filling in some of the time while we go if we don't have any other questions or through the comments.
I hope everything's working. We appear to be live on my end.
Talking Sean, about technology, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So with your consulting company that you started a little over a year ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you help companies make sense of all of this? And how could somebody get in touch with you if they wanted to find some more information?
Absolutely. Well, the first easiest way, connect with me on LinkedIn. So hopefully as a viewer watching the LinkedIn live right now, easy to connect with me, Sean Albertson. You can find me there, but also at my website, CXPRESSO.com. And ultimately where I work with organizations, especially on the advisory and consulting side, one is really looking and digging into your business, understanding where are you in the maturity scale, if you will, where are you in the capabilities from that perspective, where are your biggest gaps or challenges across people, process, and platform. And then I usually engage and often, bring someone in and say, all right, well, one of those steps is journey mapping, which I might recommend my friend David Seaton to to help with that. But I really focus on how to use, again, people, process, and technology to get to a position of orchestrating the journey and being able to do that. A company I worked with, I'll just give an example while we're looking at, we created a set of reportings that would trigger weekly. And they were able to look at it and would very clearly identify where problems were, highlight them to the point of which journey and where in the journey was it happening. And so they were able to use that. And all of a sudden, one week, something that usually was floating in the bottom half of the report as far as being a problem, it was always on the good side, jumped to like number 5. And not only did it jump to that, where we were looking, it jumped and said the issue was in the handoff from the website to the call center. And then it was hitting on repeat calls and lack of resolution. And those metrics jumped immediately. So we were digging in with the organization, and within literally hours, we realized, talking to the marketing team, that, well, they were trying to make things easier. So they took the email that was part of this process and they moved it up 2 days. So it was be done faster, which is great in context. The problem is they didn't talk to the other department, and the link on the email wasn't working yet. So what was happening, the customers, oh, great, I get the email, I click on it, and then it breaks. Not only did it break, but it broke the entire process, and the customer had to start from the beginning. So this is where things will happen constantly in our environment. And we have to just be ready, and we have to understand, and then be looking for that, and then ready to change, because every great intention from departments, if not done and orchestrated well, you may end up with things like this that occur. You got to be ready to listen and act. And that's where technologies, through people, process, and technologies or platforms, I help companies build those so they can really immediately interact and react, if you will, with the customers.
Awesome. Sean, thanks so much for being my first guest on CXPRESSO Caffeine Overload. It's been an absolute pleasure. Everybody, please connect with Sean on LinkedIn. Don't just follow him, send him a connection request. He'll connect with you. Check out his website, cxforrocks.com. And then I send where the CXPRESSO comes from. That's the name of the weekly CX strategy email that I send to several hundred CX leaders. If you'd like to receive a copy, just type into your browser hot.cxpresso.cx. Thanks for joining us on Caffeine Overload, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.